three significant developments have emerged in this case simultaneously. Tomorrow also marks a fourth event this family has feared for more than 2 weeks. First, the FBI has at last formally documented its involvement in this case completely and officially. Second, the young woman behind this case's largest unanswered inconsistency has ended her personal silence, not through family members, not through an indirect message, but directly with Nolan's own mother. Third, somewhere within this story, a family tied to this case has become the focus of a genuine threat, serious enough that federal authorities are now participating. And fourth, tomorrow, Nolan Wells will be laid to rest. Tonight, before that occurs, we're examining everything that has surfaced during the last several days carefully, while distinguishing what's officially verified from what's still being shared indirectly. For weeks, the issue of precisely why the FBI became involved in this case had been explained only in pieces. One detail here, another remark there. This week, the Bureau's Jackson field office issued a full official public statement, and it deserves to be heard completely. The statement says that although the FBI has supported certain portions of the investigation through federal resources and partnerships that have proven valuable, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office remains and will continue directing this investigation. It characterizes a trusted, productive partnership between Jackson County and the FBI established through many years of collaborating side by side on complicated cases. It states the FBI has assisted Jackson County since the first day in efforts to collect information and discover answers for the Wells family and the wider community. It concludes by stating the FBI remains prepared to provide additional assistance, especially where federal resources may increase local capability in hopes of delivering clarity and peace of mind to everyone who cares about Nolan. It's worth considering the tone of that statement because tone carries just as much importance here as substance. This isn't a press release declaring a breakthrough or a major escalation. Instead, it reads more like reassurance, cautious, balanced, and intentionally written to reduce concern surrounding a question that had been creating genuine anxiety for several days. Someone within that field office clearly recognized that unexplained federal involvement was encouraging more speculation than clarification, and decided to address the matter directly in writing, instead of allowing rumors to continue filling the void. This is important because until now, considerable speculation had occupied the gap where a clear explanation should have existed. Much of that speculation viewed FBI involvement as confirmation the investigation had quietly advanced into something significantly more serious. Other theories interpreted the Bureau's presence as evidence a cover-up was underway, federal agents allegedly stepping in to control the narrative instead of examining it. That statement supports neither interpretation. It verifies genuine, substantial federal participation, resources, partnerships, experience, while clearly affirming Jackson County remains the primary agency from beginning to end. It's assistance, not control. Keeping that distinction in mind is important whenever this case is discussed from this point onward. It's equally worth considering why this clarification required so much time before arriving. Federal agencies frequently avoid making public comments about active investigations altogether, and the fact the FBI decided to depart from that approach here, releasing a complete on-the-record statement instead of merely refusing comment, suggests they understood how much harm the uncertainty itself was causing. Silence in a case already so overwhelmed by speculation doesn't appear neutral. It appears to validate whichever theory happens to be spreading most loudly. Deciding to speak, however cautiously, was itself a choice carrying consequences, and it deserves acknowledgement, even while remaining clear-eyed about what the statement actually confirms and what it unquestionably does not. Hidden within that very statement is the precise reason federal resources became involved in this case whatsoever. The FBI states its efforts have specifically centered on interstate threats directed at individuals connected with this matter, and that this work continues alongside the family's own separate investigation, not combined with it. That's the strongest, most authoritative confirmation so far of something we've previously mentioned. Federal involvement here does not concern Nolan's death directly. It's about safeguarding people linked to this story from threats serious enough to extend across state lines and become a federal issue independently. The term interstate threats carries significant weight in that statement, and it deserves a brief explanation. For a threat to qualify as a federal matter solely because it crossed state lines, it generally means someone in one state transmitted something threatening to another person elsewhere. A message, a phone call, a mailed item using methods that naturally cross jurisdictional boundaries, with the internet foremost among them. That's precisely the type of situation the FBI was created to address. Regardless of how significant or limited the underlying case may actually be, it doesn't require Nolan's death itself to qualify as a federal matter. It simply requires that someone somewhere used interstate channels to threaten another person connected with this story. Here's what's equally important. The FBI statement does not identify what those threats actually contained or exactly who received them. TMZ's reporting about this same statement stated clearly that it remains uncertain precisely what type of threats were delivered or who ended up receiving them. That absence matters because separate unofficial reporting has circulated detailed graphic allegation regarding threats directed toward at least one family connected with this case, a family associated with one of the boys who was aboard that boat. Those particular details have not been verified through any official statement from the FBI, from Jackson County, or from anyone possessing actual authority to confirm them. I want to remain precise about that distinction here. We officially know interstate threats occurred and federal resources are responding to them. We do not possess official confirmation regarding the exact content of those threats or precisely who received them. Both statements are accurate, and it's essential not to confuse them together. There's a reason official statements usually remain general regarding exactly this type of detail, even when the underlying facts are genuine and serious. Identifying specific victims or repeating particular threatening language within an official public statement can itself create further harm, bringing greater attention to the very people the investigation seeks to protect, while potentially undermining whatever legal action may ultimately proceed against whoever delivered those threats. That restraint, although leaving the public with fewer details than they might prefer, is often an intentional protective decision, not an effort to downplay what truly occurred. Here's the development that reshapes this case more than nearly anything else unfolding this week. Katie, the young woman Nolan spoke with during his last confirmed moments on that beach, has finally spoken directly, not through a relative's Facebook post, but during an actual face-to-face meeting with Nolan's own mother. According to Christine, she and Katie met privately, sitting together in person. Christine has also stated clearly that what Katie shared with her differs from the version she's been hearing from everyone else. That marks a genuine turning point from where this case stood only a week earlier. Until now, everything connected to Katie had come through other people. Initially through a family friend repeating what she'd learned secondhand, then through Katie's own mother and sister sharing Facebook posts to address rumors that had spun beyond control. Every one of those accounts was naturally filtered through another person's recollection of Katie's words, instead of coming from a direct discussion with the only person possessing first-hand knowledge of Nolan's last confirmed statements. That face-to-face conversation between Katie and Christine changes everything. As far as we know, this is the first occasion information about that conversation has passed directly from the individual who experienced it to the person needing to understand it most, without anyone else acting between them. This deserves careful examination because the details matter and because Katie's first-hand account is both more precise and more restrained than much of the public discussion has implied. According to Christine, Katie has remained consistent since the very start. She and Nolan met that day, spent time together, and eventually separated. Katie later returned to a boat with her own friends, apart from Nolan's group. She believed, based upon their conversation, that Nolan intended to return and reconnect with his own friend's boat. Here's the detail carrying the greatest importance. Katie never personally watched Nolan board that boat. She believed it because of what he told her, but she never directly witnessed him rejoining his friends. That difference truly matters. It means Katie's account isn't a first-hand eyewitness conflict with the friend's version in the sense that she observed one event while they describe another. It's more accurately this. Nolan shared his intention with her. Whether he actually carried out that intention before whatever occurred next remains something nobody, not Katie, not the friends, not the family, can presently verify firsthand. Both an assumption formed from a genuine conversation and a claim that he decided to remain can technically coexist at separate moments if circumstances changed between that conversation and whatever followed afterwards. I think it's worth considering why this subtle distinction became oversimplified so rapidly across much of the public coverage surrounding this case. A straightforward contradiction. One witness says this. Another witness says that creates a far more compelling narrative than an account centered upon an honest assumption. Yet Katie's actual position, as described by Christine, is considerably more measured than that. She's not claiming she watched Nolan leave her and climb aboard a boat. She's saying he shared his plan with her, and she had every reason to expect he would carry it out. That's a substantially different form of testimony from a first-hand eyewitness account, and it deserves to be recognized accordingly rather than grouped with a straightforward conflicting claim. This also shifts, at least to some extent, what truly requires explanation. If Katie's account is correct, the central mystery isn't whether Nolan intended to leave. It's what occurred during the interval between expressing that intention and whatever followed afterwards. An interval that, as things currently stand, nobody has managed to explain. Apart from Shepard's account and separate from the FBI's official statement, reporting has surfaced describing a genuine threat received by a family connected to this case, detailed enough in its wording that it would qualify as precisely the type of interstate threat referenced in the FBI's statement. I want to approach this carefully because of the very gap we just discussed. The FBI has confirmed threats occurred and that officials are addressing them. It has not formally confirmed the exact wording of any individual threat or identified who received it. Certain reporting has attributed detailed graphic threats to a particular family connected with one of the boys who was aboard that boat. Until that particular reporting is verified by an official source, I believe the responsible approach is treating it as credible yet unconfirmed, serious enough to consider carefully, specific enough that it shouldn't be casually repeated as established fact. What remains beyond dispute is this. Whoever is delivering threats to anyone connected with this case, regardless of what they believe happened to Nolan, is committing a serious criminal offense. Grief, suspicion, and public pressure do not give anyone permission to threaten a teenager, a parent, a judge, or anybody else. That remains true regardless of exactly whose name is connected to which particular threat. It's also worth considering the wider impact this kind of behavior has on a case like this. Every witness involved in this story, every friend, every family member, every young woman who happened to spend several minutes speaking with Nolan on a beach is watching everything unfold in real time. If stepping forward or simply being identified publicly brings the possibility of threats serious enough to attract federal involvement, that's a genuine chilling effect on anyone who otherwise might choose to come forward with information capable of genuinely helping. Protecting people from that type of retaliation isn't merely a matter of common decency. It's fundamentally tied to whether this investigation can ultimately receive the complete cooperation it genuinely requires. I continue returning to this distinction throughout this case, and I want to explain why it carries such importance here specifically. This story involves real people, including teenagers, whose identities and reputations are being influenced by every detail repeated publicly, whether confirmed or not. The FBI's own statement is intentionally cautious and non-specific about particulars, probably for precisely this reason, addressing a genuine issue, interstate threats, without allowing its own statement to become a means of further identifying or exposing anyone connected with this case. That same restraint deserves reflecting in how we report this as well. A broader principle is operating here, and it deserves to be stated plainly. In cases attracting this level of public attention, the temptation to fill every unanswered gap with the most detailed, most dramatic version of available events never disappears. A limited official statement regarding threats becomes, in less responsible hands, a detailed narrative identifying a particular victim while repeating specific violent language. Regardless of whether that account has actually been verified, that kind of exaggeration doesn't merely risk being inaccurate. It risks intensifying the very harm those original threats were intended to inflict by keeping one family's name and their fear circulating publicly long after the first threat itself. Remaining careful about this distinction isn't about minimizing what occurred. It's about refusing to become another part of the chain that continues spreading it. Moving beyond the threats themselves, here's where the actual investigation currently stands. After the July 15th meeting involving Nolan's parents and Jackson County District Attorney Angel Mears-Murath, Ben Crump confirmed the case would be presented to a grand jury once the underlying investigation is completed. He also confirmed Nolan's phone will undergo a coordinated review, with his own independent investigators examining it alongside law enforcement's separate examination of whatever those findings reveal. Sheriff John Ledbetter has spoken plainly about what his office owes this family. The Nolan Wells family, he said, deserves a comprehensive and factual investigation, and that's exactly what we're going to deliver. The state autopsy performed the Tuesday after Nolan's body was recovered remains unfinished, and the independent autopsy in Washington, D.C. has not released findings either. It's important to remember how many separate procedures are actually unfolding simultaneously here, because it's easy to lose sight of them. There's the Sheriff's Department's own investigation. There's the DA's office, now working directly alongside the family toward a grand jury referral. There's the family's separate independent investigation, staffed by former law enforcement officers and federal agents. There's the state's autopsy. There's the independent autopsy. And now there's a coordinated review of Nolan's phone involving both parties. Every one of those processes follows its own timeline, relies on its own specialists, and applies its own standard for what qualifies as confirmed. Keeping each of them separate and avoiding assumptions that progress in one automatically means something for the others is part of what makes this case truly challenging to follow accurately. That grand jury referral hasn't been viewed as entirely positive news by everyone following this case. Former Mississippi Judge Carlos Moore has publicly expressed his own concerns regarding District Attorney Murath, specifically highlighting what he describes as her office's record in an earlier, unrelated case involving a fatal police shooting where he says overwhelming evidence nevertheless failed to secure an indictment. He has argued that a grand jury referral alone should not be interpreted as progress and has stated he intends to continue monitoring this case closely to ensure it doesn't quietly stagnate the way he believes that previous case did. Another attorney, Tyler Bailey, has presented a more balanced interpretation, explaining that a grand jury referral is actually ordinary standard procedure within this county for any death considered unnatural or suspicious, not by itself, evidence that foul play has been confirmed or even seriously suspected. Both viewpoints deserve consideration together. Greater skepticism comes from genuine, specific history involving this particular prosecutor's office. Bailey's explanation reflects how these referrals usually operate as part of normal procedure. This may be standard practice, while this particular DA's record may still warrant close ongoing scrutiny. The true measure isn't the referral itself. It's what actually occurs once a grand jury receives whatever evidence this investigation ultimately uncovers. Before moving to tomorrow, it's worth revisiting two claims that circulated widely earlier in this case because both influenced public opinion before anyone had actually verified either one, and because getting them correct matters for how carefully everything else in this update should be understood. The first involved a photograph showing Nolan at a pool party which many interpreted as proof he'd remained alive after the 4th of July. Rolling Stone confirmed through image metadata and an account from his friend Trakan Shepard that the photograph was actually captured on June 27th, an entire week before Nolan ever stepped onto Horn Island. The second involved the viral video many people believed showed Nolan during an argument shortly before he vanished. Shepard has repeatedly and personally confirmed that the voice heard in that recording belongs to him, not Nolan. Both corrections point toward the same underlying pattern. Within the uncertainty created by 2 autopsies still awaiting results, unverified claims have repeatedly moved faster than confirmed facts. That pattern deserves remembering with every new development in this case, including everything discussed tonight. Verified information and second-hand accounts can appear identical at first glance. The only reliable way to distinguish them is by asking every single time exactly where each specific detail originally came from. As all this continues, Nolan's family is only one day away from facing something no parent should ever endure. The funeral is scheduled for tomorrow, Monday, July 20th, at Centerpoint Church in Ocean Springs, with visitation taking place from 9 to 11 that morning, and the service starting immediately afterwards. Reverend Al Sharpton will preside. There's another detail worth mentioning that has received very little attention. The Mississippi Coast Coliseum and Convention Center's own commission actually voted unanimously to make their venue available for this service. The family eventually selected Centerpoint Church instead, and the Coliseum responded with genuine grace, issuing a statement saying they respected the family's decision and remained committed to supporting both them and the wider community throughout this difficult period. That interaction, a public venue offering its facilities, being declined, then responding with sincere warmth instead of even the slightest sign of resentment, reflects something about the wider community's response to this case that's easy to miss amid everything unfolding elsewhere. This isn't merely a family challenging an investigation. It's a family receiving active support through tangible, practical assistance from organizations and individuals who never personally knew Nolan, yet have clearly been touched by his story. Even so, for anyone unable to attend personally, the church has announced it will live stream the entire funeral through both its website and its YouTube channel. That means people following this case from anywhere across the country will be able to witness the service as it unfolds. That's a meaningful detail by itself. This funeral will not be a private, quiet farewell. It will be viewed live by strangers throughout the country who have spent more than 2 weeks following this story alongside the family, friends, and teammates assembling personally in Ocean Springs. Consider what that actually means for a moment. A funeral is, under almost every ordinary circumstance, among the most private, intimate ceremonies a family experiences. A closed circle of mourning shared only with those who genuinely knew the person being buried. This funeral will represent the complete opposite. Broadcast live, observed by an audience that has spent 2 weeks discussing GPS data, disputed witness accounts, and viral videos, now invited to witness the genuine human cost behind everything they've been following. That's an extraordinary, almost unprecedented degree of public visibility into one family's private grief. It's also worth remembering, as coverage of tomorrow unfolds, that what's being live-streamed is the genuine funeral of a real 18-year-old, not merely the next chapter in an ongoing story. I think it's important to state plainly what this funeral represents within the context of everything else surrounding it. This is a family that has spent the past 16 days publicly and tirelessly seeking answers about how their son died while simultaneously having to arrange his funeral entirely in public view. Tomorrow, those two paths meet directly. The same media that has documented every development in this investigation will attend a service intentionally created, in Christine's own words, to celebrate who Nolan truly was, instead of focusing upon the suspicion and grief that have otherwise shaped this story. There's something worth reflecting upon regarding the timing of everything we've discussed tonight, arriving on the eve of this funeral. The FBI's statement, Katie's account, the threat reporting, Every part of it emerged during these final hours before Nolan is finally laid to rest, meaning his family will enter tomorrow morning carrying every one of those unresolved questions alongside them. They will stand inside that church honoring their son's life, while a grand jury referral remains somewhere ahead, while 2 autopsies are still incomplete, while uncertainty surrounding his final conversation remains unresolved, and while, according to some reporting, a threat investigation continues behind the scenes. Grief in this case has never been allowed to exist independently, apart from everything surrounding it. Tomorrow will not alter that, even though it gives this family several hours intentionally reserved to try. So, bringing this update together, the FBI has now officially documented its role in this case completely, confirming meaningful assistance with digital forensics and specifically with responding to interstate threats directed at people connected with this story, while clearly stating Jackson County firmly remains in charge. Katie, the young woman at the center of this case's primary contradiction, has finally spoken directly, meeting face-to-face with Nolan's own mother, and confirming an account carrying greater nuance than public discussion has frequently suggested. An assumption regarding Nolan's intentions, not a first-hand confirmation of what truly happened afterwards. Meanwhile, reporting, still lacking official confirmation regarding its specific details, describes a family connected with this case receiving threats serious enough to fall within exactly what that FBI statement addresses. Tomorrow, Nolan Wells will be laid to rest during a service his family has designed around celebration instead of sorrow. Live-streamed for everyone wishing to attend without physically being present. Nolan Wells was 18. 2 autopsies still have not told his family how he died. A grand jury remains waiting somewhere further ahead. Meanwhile, this case continues generating exactly the kind of pain, threats, hostility, and public suspicion that everyone connected with it, his friends, a young woman who simply spoke with him on a beach, and now perhaps an entire family, say they never imagined becoming targets of. There's a broader pattern within this update worth recognizing as we conclude. Every one of these 4 threads, the FBI statement, Katie's account, the threat reporting, and tomorrow's funeral, reflects a different kind of institution or relationship being tested by this case simultaneously. A federal agency compelled to explain its actions publicly. A young woman compelled to become a central witness in a story she never wanted involvement with. A family compelled to live under active protection from people wishing them harm solely because of their connection to this tragedy, and grieving parents compelled to bury their son beneath a level of public scrutiny almost no family facing this situation has ever been forced to endure. Each represents its own form of pressure, and all 4 are converging upon this family and this community simultaneously. It's also worth remembering how much this single week actually clarified despite resolving nothing. 2 weeks earlier, this case was driven almost entirely by anonymous allegations, viral clips removed from context, and conflicting second-hand accounts. This week delivered something different. A federal agency officially speaking on the record, a central witness finally speaking directly instead of through relatives, and a degree of detail regarding threats, timelines, and procedure that simply hadn't existed previously. None of that amounts to a final answer yet, but it makes this a substantially different case from what it was only several days ago. Better grounded, more thoroughly documented, and, in certain respects, more transparent about what still remains unknown. What happens next, in the most immediate sense, begins tomorrow morning. A church welcoming family, friends, coaches, and teammates. A live stream carrying that same service to strangers throughout the country. And behind everything, an investigation that hasn't stopped for even a single day throughout all this, continuing its work through a phone that still hasn't undergone a joint examination, 2 autopsies still awaiting results, and an unresolved contradiction surrounding Nolan's final conversation that even Katie's own first-hand account hasn't completely answered. We'll continue following this story through tomorrow's funeral, through both autopsy findings, and through whatever follows as this investigation advances toward a grand jury. We'll share the facts only after they're genuinely verified and never before. That's everything we have for you right now, everyone. Every case leaves questions behind. What's your verdict? If you enjoyed this investigation, like the video and subscribe to Crime Scene Files for more true crime stories. Tell me your theory and where you're watching from in the comments now. Click the next case on your screen, because the truth is never as simple as it seems.